Kamala Harris and Tim Walz leaning into the Minnesota governor's Midwestern dad vibes in a new video last night as the two seek to frame their campaign as the underdog. Walz, though, is facing fresh criticism over how he once portrayed a DUI charge that he received nearly 30 years ago. CNN's K-File reports that as a 2006 congressional candidate, Walz's campaign repeatedly made misleading statements about this incident, including telling the press that he had not been drinking that night, claiming that his failed field sobriety test was due to a misunderstanding related to hearing loss from his time in the National Guard, and that Walz was allowed to drive himself to jail that night, none of which was true. With us now on this Friday, CNN political commentator Michael Smerconish. He is the host of CNN's Smerconish. Michael, thrilled to have you as always. Let's dig in here to these questions about the running mates and what we are learning here about Tim Walz and what he's saying. I mean, clearly he's getting this is his first real vet on a national stage, and some of it's not standing up to scrutiny, it seems to me.
So I thought the DUI issue was a really significant and serious issue. I know that Republicans have spent a lot of time talking about the alleged stolen valor. My own opinion, for what it's worth, having studied the facts, is that there's no there. Walz spoke sloppily, should not have represented a role that he had as having been a permanent role when it wasn't. But the DUI story is indefensible. Casey, you and I know a thing or two about congressional campaigns. They're very small. They're very tight. There's usually like a paid campaign manager and a paid spokesperson, and that's it. So the idea that this came from his spokesperson and it didn't come from him, I don't buy it. And the idea that he tried to lay it off on a hearing disability from the National Guard service through the spokesperson while denying things that the K-File investigation proved to be inaccurate, I think is a real issue for him. In the end, it's going to be about the top of the ticket. But to me, the DUI is bigger than the stolen valor allegation, not because of the drinking, but because of the lie.
How do you think the Harris campaign should be dealing with this right now?
Full on. And it makes me wonder whether in the vetting process, maybe this is as a result of the expedited nature of her ascendancy as the candidate. But it makes me wonder how much they really knew about it. I'm sure they knew of the DUI, but it makes me wonder whether they were aware of all the underlying facts to the extent that the K-File is.
Very interesting. All right, so let's touch on J.D. Vance then briefly, because he actually has significantly higher unpopularity numbers, unfavorable numbers, than Tim Walz seems to. I don't know if this is a reflection of just his rollout and how people have perceived him since then, or if this came into play beforehand. But what do you make of how he has been received? Because we were talking to Frank Luntz earlier in the show, and there were a number of voters who had switched from Trump to Harris, or at least they had switched to voting for Harris, who mentioned J.D. Vance as one of their issues.
So I guess not as many read Hillbilly Elegy or watched the movie as I anticipated, because I thought he entered the whole process ahead of the curve, having some type of a narrative or definition that was favorable. Instead, it's the cat lady comment that is probably top of mind for those Americans who are aware of J.D. Vance. So they've done a terrible job in rolling him out, and maybe the Trump campaign, as I assumed, thought Americans knew that narrative and would view him more favorably.
Yeah. So, Michael, before I let you go, let's talk for a second about Donald Trump, who has conducted a series of media events over the course of the last few days, gotten a lot of advice from Republicans about how he shouldn't be doing some of the things that he's doing. What is your view of all of that?
He's intent on a campaign of self-immolation. I don't get it. He's all about motivation and not persuasion. Anybody remember the days when you tried to persuade undecided voters instead of just rallying your base? When he refers to the vice president as a bum, as crazy, as stupid, or as a lunatic, he's pitching to the base, and he's not winning your old neighborhood in the Philly burbs, nor mine. I don't get it. All this narrow casting. Everybody knows he has a ceiling. What is it? 45, 46%. And when you don't have an effective third party candidate, and we don't in this race, then he's really tapped out. And yet I don't understand why he's not more concerned about reaching suburban women. Obstacles remain for Kamala Harris, to be sure, because she's not yet been battle tested. But I don't understand his visceral, angry reaction from Trump when he said yesterday, I'm entitled to personal attacks. What's he talking about? I don't understand. But look, he's defied, all logic in the past, and maybe this will work. I just don't see it.
We'll have to. We're about to find out. It was a very compressed, short election period. So, Michael Smerconish, always so grateful for your perspective. See you next week, I hope. All right. Thank you. Don't forget to tune in tomorrow at 9 a.m. for Smerconish. It's right here on CNN.